Hello, very good evening. Be good to have the cameras on. Maybe one of you can just quickly put it on the group that we are starting, and if they are looking forward to join, then now is the time to join. Okay. Shivam, can you put it on the group? We are starting. Take it. Okay, so meanwhile, we can probably just take a minute of silence and then we start. Thank you. Okay. Did some of you get a chance to fill the worksheet and any insights from that? Go ahead, Shivam.
I had a very troubled sleep last night because of going through the video. It's just that the trouble was coming in from the point of view ki I'm at stage one or stage two, and maybe the next job I'm thinking of, am I aiming for stage three or not? So that back and forth just got me really troubled me. Ki, okay, the next job which I'm thinking, am I thinking it from the point of view stage one or from stage three? And then am I compromising on the quality of life by looking at stage one and not stage three right now? So those were the questions which kept on bothering me in the morning today in the dreams. So yeah, but but it was good. Yeah,
It was heartbreaking, but it was good.
yeah.
So I have a couple of reflections. The first is remember one thing that say you can be in stage one, but within stage one itself, you can bring in the bhava of work as worship. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not so linear. It's only brought to it this linearity so that the mind can understand. Otherwise, in life, it is not so compartmentalized. So you can very well be in stage one, and actually, I mean, you are though doing quite well in life, but even if it was a very ordinary worker and just working in a store or anything, doing anything ordinary in the conventional world itself, it could just be feeding the oil industry. Within that itself, the bhava can be brought. So that's one thing. And the second is that uh, they mix. So in reality, no, generally, hardly anybody one can say that, this person is purely work as worship, or this person is purely, there's very hardly, that's hardly the case. And the third thing is, mother has spoken about completely transcending the entire need of work as livelihood, and particularly in the context of Orwell, she's gone very radical with it, in the sense because we are all together wanting to build a society where there is no concept of livelihood. But that's certainly not the privilege which is there in the outside world, and that one has to kind of accept. The crux there is, it could be that you are work, like you're engaging in a livelihood, but the crux there is that um, you can still be in a frame of livelihood. But is it that whatever work that you're doing, that's attracting its own money, or are you working for money? In both the cases, outwardly, superficially, they look very similar to you, because you can be like, hey, you're also working for money because money is involved. But there's a lot of difference if in the inner reality, it's not that you are pursuing money, but money is being given for the work that has to be done. And that can also sometimes be in abundance if that is what the work really, really requires. You were going to say something in the middle, you had unmuted.
Yes, I was saying something. Yes, so actually the trouble came in from this thing. So Devanshi, I was also reading your another blog, which was like, what are the 12 elements of like the stage 4? So I think I agree with your points, but then I thought also was troubling me was like, then within a corporate job, is stage 4 a possibility? Like, and there are questions that were written in your blog were more on the point of view, okay, whom are you working for? Where is, so all those other elements was something which I was thinking would be great for me as a A4 pager also, like these questions for me to think on, or for anyone to reflect on, key, how does one progress to stage 4? So yeah, so those were the thoughts which actually were troubling me.
There also in stage 4 itself, uh, actually one can actually map stages within stage 4 itself. So it's not like it's a 0 or 1. Either you're there in stage 4 or you're not. So just like some of those questions you might have been able to say, even in corporate world, some of those questions are still possible. Other questions are probably more difficult. Some other may be impossible, but that entire spectrum really, really exists. And the important thing is, how much are you giving yourself to each of those indicators? And that is where your joy really lies. Otherwise, particularly on the path of perfection, if you constantly keep comparing yourself to the highest ideal, you will invariably feel pathetic about yourself. It's like, being in Orwell, mother has called Orwell the cradle of the Superman. I'm nowhere close to that. If I keep like thinking all the time cradle of the Superman, and all that I observe within myself through the day, I would like what, kill myself or do something, no? But I'm not constantly comparing myself to that. I want that and I aspire for that. I want to surrender to that. But I'm comparing myself to what I was 5 minutes ago. And if I'm better than that, then probably progress is happening. But when will that happen? I am not going to be so bothered about it. And that's always the case when you dare to raise your ideal. Most people from this fear that, if I raise my ideal too much, it will be too much hypocrisy in life. They don't raise their ideal. But if we can be, little light-hearted about being hypocrites, then I think it's okay to raise one's ideal. Okay, any other observations, insights? Okay, if you're going to look at me like this, then I'm going to go to the presentation. I hope you guys did get the time to fill it up, because I have like a further couple of tasks after this. Achalila, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was a very good realization that came in, that I look at most of my regular tasks as stage 1.
Mm.
For me, doing my household chores, it's like a responsibility that I have to finish. It is it's like I constantly beat myself that for me, only when I'm working on an assignment or when I'm working on yo is when I feel I'm living either in 2 or 3. Yeah. And I see that a lot of times I don't live in 2 or 3. I live, I mean, only when I'm doing the work that I really like. Again, that distinction, thanks to Sharad, that there are certain things I like and I really want to do that. And when I'm doing that is when I am at 2. Yeah, sometimes I'm at 3, but I realize most of the times the normal work that I do, in fact, it brought in a little bit of guilt as well for me, because it kind of reflected that I'm doing a lot of things in my life because I have to do. And it's an inauthentic way of actually living, but because they're not value adding for me, like when I have to, honestly, a lot of cooking, a lot of grocery shopping, a lot of not a lot of cooking, it's not like I do a lot of cooking, but cleaning and all that for me is not something, it's coming under stage 1. Karna hai bas. So that was a reflection, a very strong reflection that came in. And I remembered what I had heard about in IE, can you sip a cup of tea also as, you're doing it with complete dedication. So I'm aware of it, but it is very difficult for me to, it's like I start my day with it, but as the day progresses, it's more get done and come to what I really want to do types. So it's just a sharing. Yeah.
These are not to make you guys guilty, okay? Yeah, very beautiful sharings, Leela. Very beautiful how you're able to hold space for both the challenge within yourself as well as you are able to hold space for the breakthrough that has to kind of happen. And you mentioned both Sharat's example, which is really if you're really passionate about something and if you're really serving something, you're willing to let go of likes and dislikes. And the very cup tea drinking example that you said, that very act of drinking tea can be worship if done with that attitude. Maybe just a suggestion, there is those another assignment kya hai, matlab chota sa exercise that is there as a homework is to a journal around these 12 indicators using one project. So your project you can choose is your household chores, and look at how you can bring in each of those indicators within household chores. So rather than reflecting on where you are at the moment with respect to household chores, but just look at something that you're anyway going to be doing and where you're not really experiencing the rasa, and how in that place itself you can try and bring that element of devotion and worship in it. So when that assignment kind of comes,
that's tomorrow, right? I mean, I maybe I got a little confused. So today we had to watch the first video, which has the
this is tomorrow. This is future. This is tomorrow.
Okay,
This is not today.
Okay.
Okay, so what we have today. Shall we move ahead now to what we have today? So excited to tell you about it. Debrief bhi dang se nahi kiya. Okay, so basically, it's something that I actually I'm quite passionate about. When you will hear what I'm passionate about, you'll probably laugh. But I'm really passionate about the calendar. And I keep Manoj's calendar. I keep my calendar. I keep ACI's calendar. I keep Integral Education Portal's calendar. Basically, all the calendars I keep. So I'm keeping at the moment calendar for a good number of people. So what I thought and what I felt is that with the stages and indicators, you will get a more essential understanding of Karma Yoga. But what I can concentrate on the Monday session is much more of a practical understanding, meaning how you can actually use a tool which is usually seen from a very corporate angle, from a very machine based angle. That same tool of calendar, how that can really be used to accelerate our yogic journey and to really accelerate, if service or worship, that's what we want to grow in life. How can we use the tool of a simple calendar in order to accelerate that movement? Now I've kind of put together all my learnings in the form of a presentation. Some of them may apply to you, some of them may not apply to you. Just take what you can for your context. So really focus on your context and what can I learn, and approach the presentation from that angle as to, okay, what can you really incorporate? Because I truly fully feel that each person's calendar is extremely, extremely unique. Yet I've tried to kind of cull out some general principles behind it. And yeah, so just basically the agenda is take what you feel is going to work for your context and in your unique trajectory that you're going to weave through your calendar. So with that, I will begin to share my presentation. No, this one here. So beginning with, everything is sacred, everything is work. Bathing, cleaning, dancing, talking to a loved one. All of these happen in time, and all of this is work. Particularly from the angle of Karma Yoga, there is no distinction between, these days we call work as that which happens in career, that which happens, which is related to livelihood. From the angle of Karma Yoga, even your thought is an action, even your feeling is an action. And then there are more concrete outer action, which also includes simple little actions like breathing, cleaning, getting up, waking up, moving a hand. Everything is a part of that. Now, the thing is, all these, at least the outer actions, they take place here in time, which is why we are going to be focusing on the calendar. So I'm calling it Karma Yoga through conscious calendar. And usually when we think of, many of us think of calendar, schedules, routines, they make you like a machine. It makes you rigid. It blocks the flow. And that has kind of come up as a, as something that many of us feel, because most of the times calendar, schedules, and routines are tailored towards things which are not in alignment to our true values and our true purpose. And we are so used to, see, for instance, the major damage for many, many students happens in school because you're given a timetable, and especially the children who are not very academic, not very mental, for them, that's not the way of schooling. And they're kind of given, you have to follow a certain schedule, a timetable, which kind of fully takes control of your life by the means of time, can become like really something that, you can hate. And that's perhaps why we've kind of have, made a very negative image of calendar, schedules, routines. And we feel like, they make us like a machine. So let's first begin with understanding what they are. They are neither like, a tool to be shunned away, nor they are a tool to be glorified. They are simply a tool. And when something is a tool or an instrument, it always has a possibility. So it's going to be as good as the person who's making use of it, and to the purpose the tool is being used. So it is a special instrument because work in life, upon earth at least, manifests in time and space. And calendars help us anchor in date and venue. So if you really look at calendars, they are really like a magical tool that can really help us play with time and space and really experience spacelessness and timelessness if we have a mastery over time and space. So it can really become an extremely spiritual tool once we really know how to harness it. There is a truth of each moment. Now there is a part of us which is eternal, which is beyond time and space. But now that part of us is trying to come into manifestation upon earth. And for it to come into manifestation upon earth, there is a truth of each moment. Meaning, at every point in time, there is a highest possibility of what this moment can be, of what I can be in this moment. And a mastery over time and space helps us become that, become the highest of what one is. Another way of looking at this statement is there is a truth of each moment. Now you'll also see that, sometimes when we say schedule work that requires a lot of creativity just after having a heavy meal, we feel that's not really the right time to, open up the mind to new ideas, to receive inspiration, to receive revelation. So there is a truth to each moment in the rhythm of the day itself. So to tap into what is the rhythm of each day and how can I allow the truth in that moment to express itself. Now, mastering one's time is actually the basis of self-control. And self-control is itself the basis of all manifestation. And at the heart of it, all of us, somewhere or the other, deep down within ourselves, really want to contribute, really want to serve, really want to express ourselves, really want to manifest. And for that manifestation to express in its fullness, the basis is time. The basis is self-control, of which the basis is time. Now, this is another analogy to help you understand. A river can flow because the banks holds its shores. So often when we see the river, we are just looking at the river. We're mesmerized by the river, and that is what we are focusing on. But actually, it's never only the river. It is the banks as well as the river. It's the banks of the river which is holding the river. So our time and our calendar is literally like the banks of the river that can really contain the river, that can really direct the river, that can really allow the river to come into existence in its full flow. Actually, if the banks didn't exist, then this flow of the river that we enjoy will just be, all over the place and chaotic. It'll be all flooded. And we all want that flow, but that flow is only enabled once we have anchors in place. And you cannot really honor the river if you do not honor its banks. Now, another example, what makes a dancer dance? When we look on stage and we look at a dancer dance, we are like really, we're so mesmerized and we are into a flow, we are into that joy. But behind that kind of a performance on stage, there is so much of just like hitting the beat at the right time, which isn't something that's extremely, full of joy or rasa or flow or emotion, but it's just pure discipline of hitting the beat at the right time. If there are 3 dancers on stage, just this ability to synchronize movements. So there is a lot of work on tala that goes behind the performances that we enjoy. And often we remember the performances, we forget the fact that behind it is a lot of discipline. Behind it, actually, there's a lot of structure. And then this is probably the last slide. One second, on chat, there is a message. I replaced banks as the creative constraints. These are your creative constraints on which you can function and come alive to your full potential. Creative constraints reminds me, even, while we are building an organization, often we don't want creative constraints. We are really like, let it be fluid. And, we really want to manifest our ideals. And the greatest example that comes to my heart is Arvind Eye Care. Because they started with like 3 key constraints, that we will not fundraise, we will not say no to anybody, we will be self-sustainable, that, they created the magic that they could, that no matter what happened, they did not go against those creative constraints. And if we were to also say, look at our lives, times also that creative constraint, in which we have to fully come alive, then every moment becomes like, okay, can I live my fullness in the next half an hour? That really then becomes the question. So why calendar? Often, people feel calendar and too much of this scheduling and everything, you don't enjoy things, you don't be in the present. But actually, it's exactly the other way around. so that when you're with your children, you're not thinking about that work that is, pending and yet to be done. You're just with your children and you're fully enjoying, because you've scheduled time in your calendar for being with children, and you've scheduled time in your calendar for other things. So it's not like, I'm cooking and I'm thinking about those 4 other things, and then I'm working and I'm thinking about those 4 other things. I create that spaciousness in my life where I can really truly be fully present without a background conversation going on within me. I did not do this. This also has to be done. The second is, so you can become self-aware. So you're giving energies where you're giving your time. Essentially, your life is flowing in the unit of time. You're becoming in the image of what you give yourself to. So this is a principle which is central to the Vedas, no? The principle of sacrifice. You become to whom you sacrifice yourself to. In the image of that is what you're becoming. So if whatever you're giving your time to, time is your real currency actually. That is what you're really spending. And whatever it is that you're giving your time to, in the image of that is who you become. So, and particularly when you have it in the form of a calendar, whenever in your reflective movements, you can actually see where did all the time really go. Otherwise, we have a vague memory of these things. And sometimes we also create memories. So we don't really know. But if there is a calendar, it really helps us become self-aware that, this is where I was going off. And actually, I have one habit that even when, say, for instance, something was scheduled for 7 and that couldn't happen for whatever reason, and I ended up doing something else, I will actually go back in my calendar and make the change in terms of what I actually did, so that I can look back at my calendar to actually see where I spent my time. So I don't let an event which actually did not happen just because it's past be there. I actually delete it or I change it with what I did. And the last thing is, so you can live your fullest. From giving time to work, to education, to self-care, you find time for everything under the sun that you ever wanted to do. So ever since, for me, every time, I felt in life I'm overworked, I really realized it's a matter of organization. It's always in my life, as I've experienced it, it's always been like a sense of overwhelm that I have a lot of work. It's never really been a sense of overwork, because when I give each thing in its right place in the calendar and I actually surrender then to that calendar and start following, I find time for everything from self-care to, it's more often than not 99% a matter of organization than really a matter of an actual overwork. And here we are looking at productivity as service. Efficiency is not a bad corporate word if it serves the divine. Remember, the definition of yoga given by the mother is that it is the shortest pathway to the divine. So which is efficiency, which is productivity. It's the shortest pathway. So with that, now I'm going to begin in terms of, this was all the why. So I just wanted to make sure you're all convinced before we kind of get on board with this. So then, but as I kind of also move ahead, just take in for your context, because I also understand certain people are more structured and other people are more fluid. And ideally, an ideal human being would actually be able to be both fluid and structured according to what the situation demands him or her to be. So that's why, I have made the presentation in a certain way, but you really take it for your context and you take it for your nature. Particularly, you have a bent more towards fluidity, then you take, what is it that is relevant for your context and can help you kind of accelerate your journey. Similarly, if you have a tendency to be over-structured, then maybe it's the time to declutter the calendar and bring in more fluidity. So that bit of customization each one has to do of this entire presentation. So everything you manifest, everything you wish to manifest must have an intention, a time, and a date. So beginning with intention. So setting an intention for each day of the week. Actually, I began this practice during, summer where I was having eye strain. And I was physically making a calendar because I just couldn't, afford to look on the screen for long hours. So when I made like physically a calendar, I named each day. I said, Mondays are magical Mondays. Tuesdays are transformative Tuesdays. Wednesdays are wow Wednesdays. Thursdays are thankful Thursdays. Fridays are flowering Fridays. And Saturdays are silent Saturdays. Sundays are Savitri Sundays. And it may look like, something that some people do when they're in KG, and the teachers make the little kids do fall so that, they can be excited about coming to school. But honestly, it works for just as well or even better for adults too. So really, whatever it works for you. And the very fact that, I put it like an alliteration. So it was really like, I was looking forward to the magic of Monday. And, even as during the day, you may find yourself, doing very mundane chores, everyday tasks. But because you have that intention that this is not just any Monday, this is magical Monday. So, if you're very consciously noticing those fireflies, which are full of magic in your life. So really setting an intention for each day of the week. And then the magic number 3, which is another way of setting an intention. Now, 2021 has just begun. So what are your 3 goals for the year? And then, when you're looking at your calendar, say at the end of each Sunday, when you're looking at next week's calendar, what are your top 3 goals for the week? And then when you're looking at planning your day, what are your top 3 most important tasks, MITs of the day? And literally it's like, if we go beyond 3, we can't really carry it in our minds. And if it is within 3, it's like we really can hold it. And whatever we hold it is what we give power, energy, consciousness to, and that is what begins to manifest. So, some of us may have very concrete goals for the year. That this year I want to get back to dancing. This year, I would really like to contribute to so-and-so projects. Other people may have more like fluid goals or more value-based goals such as, this year I would really like peace to be established in my life. But to really hold it as top 3 in your mind and in your consciousness. So the magic number 3, that's another way of setting your intention. Now there is a right. Now we went through intention, now time. Now time, there is a right time for each thing. Now this is just something that, we found on the basis of our on-ground programs here. And also I remember this is a little bit more contextualized to modern day life. We also once had someone who is an expert in Ayurveda take one of our classes. And I'll also be presenting another slide on the basis of that. And the rhythm of the day was very similar to what I've presented here, but this is way more contextualized to modern day, because in his setup, one were to get up at 2 a.m. And that was a very, very, it was literally according to the different time spaces that exist in a day. And that has different planetary influences and the different doshas that are active. Now, I'm not an expert in it. And personally, myself, I'm not getting up at 2 a.m. And I found that to be very educative, but not very practical for my context. So I'm not following that. So this is what I've kind of found. It's a much relaxed, much flexible version of that. Early morning as a great time for cleaning, writing, sunbathing, sun gazing, Surya Namaskars, bathing. So that's really early morning is the best time for that. Morning, when the mind is fresh, that's really the best time to be studying, to be working on creative projects. Afternoon, best time for site visits, routine work, organizational work. evening exercise, cooking, dancing, hatha yoga, early dinners, late evenings, conversations, documentaries, relaxed education, poetry, journaling, family time, manifesting ideas around which you already have clarity, storytelling. This is pretty much also the rhythm over a period of time I found for my personal routine. But again, you have to kind of see according to your life. This is also pretty much the rhythm which I've personally found is a rhythm that works well. This is the time structure that he had kind of shared with us. Pitta, which is made of water and fire, and fire is the major element there. That's basically 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 10 a.m. to 2 a.m., 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. So in the night also, that's your 10 p.m. to 2 p.m., which is why they say that it's good to sleep between these hours, because you get the most amount of healing. Active healing happens during these hours between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. And in the daytime between 10 a.m. and 2 a.m. is the best time to get a lot of work done, because this is really, Pitta is really the energy of work, of manifestation. Vata is really the energy of, it's really a meditative energy in many, many ways. And it's also a energy of knowledge, because the elements that it is construed of is air and space. And that brings a meditativeness, that brings ideas, creative flow of ideas. So this is between 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is the best time, they say, to study. But very difficult for many of us. But yes, that's also the time that Manoj gets up in the morning and he does his studies and his writings and his ideas. That's all around that time. Another time where Vata is dominant is 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Then Kapha, which is really, the element of earth and water. And earthiness kinds of also gives a homeliness kind of a sense, and at the same time can be also lazy. So it can bring a little bit both. These are the timings that they say can be a little sluggish also, and it's good to kind of do workout around this time so as to get rid of that sluggishness from the system. So this is both 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. as well as 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. But again, I'm not an expert into this, and I'm not very religiously myself following this at all, actually. Like, I'm not really religiously following that. So this is really the three doshas, and then the rhythm of the day. So we said intention, time, and day. So regarding the third one, so each day also, and now this will take some time for you to digest. So don't worry about trying to remember, which day Sunday is Pitta, or, Wednesday is which day. You will not remember, and that is completely fine. You're not even expected to remember this chart at all. But this chart, actually, I discovered in the process of making this presentation, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised that much of what it suggested, I was following it in my life, and I was doing it completely intuitively. So then I kind of trusted this chart in terms of what it really had to say. So it talked about Sunday as Pitta dominated. So usually we think of Sunday as a day of relaxation, but actually Sunday is a day of, even if it's of relaxation and water, because one of the elements of Pitta is also water, it's a day of active relaxation. So by active relaxation, one can say, be it a spiritual retreat, or, really actively planning one's next week ahead, or going for a trek, something that's active relaxation and creative work and action. That's really, Pitta is the energy of work, of getting things moving and getting things done. But probably Sunday would be in your personal life. Thereafter comes Monday. Monday brings Kapha and Vata together, which means that, slowly getting off to the rest of the day. So slowly kind of getting back to work. There is that energy of Kapha, which brings in still that homely kind of a sense, or still that sense of, earthiness that's there. And you're only beginning now to kind of connect to work. So Take Monday slowly getting back to work. It's a day of meditation, light exercise, getting started slowly but concentratedly. Vata will really also help you concentrate if you can really, make use of the greatness of Vata. Then Tuesday onwards, you fully get on work. And then that is really the day of creative work and action. And Wednesdays has all three doshas. So either your work can go even ahead. So, it can be reaching extraordinary heights on Wednesdays. Or if you get disbalanced, then, you can also be going into a little bit of pit because there is all three doshas which are simultaneously present. And Thursdays is really the day of kind of coming, together, meetings, and thereafter Kapha, which is Friday, a day of kind of closure, assimilation of ideas. And Saturday, because it's a pure Vata day, it's a day of, new creative ideas, new thinking, new projects. And because it's also a pure Vata day, it's also very important to stick to your routine on Saturdays, because Vata energy is such that, it doesn't like routine. And it actually flourishes when it has a routine. So Vata energy, generally, because it's so full of air and so full of space, it doesn't like those anchors of routine. But ironically, these are the people who benefit the most out of having a routine and a structure. So if you're not aware, which is your body structure, you can also just probably do a test online and get a sense of, your bending. Like for instance, for me, it is Pitta. So you will also see that one is what is the nature of these days, and second is how am I interacting with each of the days. And to sum this very complex chart which is in front of you, is simply begin with an active Sunday, active relaxation on Sunday. Let Sunday be relaxing, but not like, going into a pit of watching Netflix, but really much more of a rejuvenating and active Sunday that also allows you to plan for the rest of the week. Slowly starting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday peaking, Thursday meetings, Friday assimilating, Saturday new ideas. That's really the summary of it. So as a curve, if you can imagine, it's like slowly going up and then slowly relaxation, literally like an in-breath and an out-breath. Now, this is something that I made on the basis of the 4 stages of work. Now, for those of us who are, engaged in quite a bit in livelihood, it's okay to have that as a major space in life. So the way I've kind of tried to divide it is 6 plus 6 plus 12. So 6 hours of work for livelihood and joy. And even if, we are working for livelihood, you can bring in joy, you can bring in the attitude of worship. Then if your work is not directly tailored toward any kind of service or any kind of social responsibility, try and see if you can take up 1.5 hours of volunteering every day, and then 1.5 hours of education every day as, lifelong learners on this path of life. And then 1.5 hours of inner practices. And those inner practices could also be things like cooking or cleaning or meditation, flower mandala, gardening, painting, tratak, anything. And 1.5 hours of conversations, meaningful, deep, heartfelt conversations, and 12 hours for your routine, maintenance routines. There is an adapted version of this, which is by none other than Sri Aurobindo himself. He's given a formula of 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. But in his format, you hardly get any sleep. And you have to meditate for 6 hours a day. So I really modified it to what I consider it as more human than what he had proposed. So I've made it 6 plus 6 plus 12 instead of 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. That's how I've kind of altered it. And if you notice, one second. Before you notice anything further, often when I say that, just give 6 hours or less of your day, 5 to 6 hours of your day must go towards livelihood. People say you do not know how much work I have. Okay. And actually research suggests that in an 8-hour day, the average worker is only productive for 2 hours, 53 minutes. That's right. You're probably only productive for around 3 hours a day. So remember that, you might be thinking you're working for 8 hours, but that is really what your calendar is saying. Doesn't necessarily mean in all those 8 hours, all you're doing is work. So when I say, in this ideal schedule, I would actually say 5 to 6 hours. Mother, in the context of Auroville, has spoken about 5 hours of work a day towards the collective, towards the community. That doesn't include any personal work, and 7 days a week. And the only condition in which she said you can take a Sunday off if you're taking it for a spiritual retreat, because she says most people really do not know how to relax and how to take a Sunday basically, because mother says that most people, when given a Sunday, will waste it, will not really use it for their growth. So even if you're relaxing, you must know how to relax. Otherwise, you're going to go down the drain of entertainment and a lot of other forces. And not to again feel guilty if that still exists in your life. It still exists in my life, and it's okay, but it's still good to know what the ideal is. So with that, coming to the next slide. So this is basically, I've tried to map it against the different parts of being where your inner practices are in white, which is against psychic and spiritual education. Your green conversations are the emotional part of being. The education is the mental part of being. The maintenance routines, that's the bodily part of being. And then you have the service and social responsibility, which is the psychic in action. And then there is also like a neutral color given to work as livelihood and joy, which can also become pink when you begin to bring within it the spirit of work as service. So that's a formula that I kind of came up with. I thought Shubham really likes these formulas, so I kind of put it in this fashion for those of you who are able to appreciate it in this way. So, okay, with that, I come to the 12 different things in your calendar that you can very practically look at. So first is to include everything in your calendar. Usually when we think of calendars, we are like meetings, very dry, boring events, very education kind of things. Those go in our calendar. But the real things in life, conversations, or I'm not saying that meetings are not real things in life, pardon my word, but the other things in life often do not really get a space in a calendar. So, in one of the seminar Manoj had taken with teachers in Chennai, and one of the teachers really, at the end of the session figured out that she's lacking joy in life. She hasn't danced. She used to really dance as a child. So, she put in her calendar to dance for 15 minutes. It will happen if it is in your calendar. That's the thing. If you're really happy to surrender to your calendar, it will happen the moment you put it in your calendar. So, even things like, I want to dance 15 minutes a day, things like this usually remain here. It's like a wish. It's a wishful thinking. But put it in your calendar so that it actually happens. So plan by energy. So when you are kind of putting everything in your calendar, it's important to plan by energy. So what I mean by energy is, already kind of trying to see what would be my energy at this hour of the day. And what would be my energy when I am in a meeting with difficult people? And after that, so for instance, if I'm entering honestly a meeting with like very difficult people, I would not schedule another meeting after that. I would give even if, somebody's asking me for a meeting, I would try and schedule it another time. If, I'm already in a difficult meeting and, after that, just back to back have another meeting, that doesn't make sense. So you have to energetically plan your calendar and being very conscious of how is your energy likely to be in that particular situation, and accordingly give yourself buffers and accordingly give yourself the rhythm. Then what will be the energy of the context and then the energy of the time and the day. The second thing to plan by is the availabilities. Now, availability of people may differ on the basis of holidays, special days, lunch times. Take this into account from the get-go. And particularly in case of holidays, you can always keep in mind, even as you might be willing to work on a Pongal, but keep in mind that, is my team also willing to work on Pongal? So you plan it from the get-go so that there are least clashes. And then intention, if you want to do something, put it in your calendar. Now, include even things like creativity and practices in your schedule. Schedule is your playground for everything, not just for meetings and phone calls. Most of the time when, you ask people to kind of make a timetable, either they will put, work related things or maintenance related things. But what about, what about like a Monday brainstorming session? Something which is, really making you open to ideas. So also consciously put in times for creativity, for brainstorming, whether alone or with your team, so that they really become a part of your life. Next, keep time for incomings, organization, and rest. So by incomings, I mean things like, for instance, emails. To have a dedicated time, in your schedule for emails, so that throughout the day, you're not worried about, or say, for instance, if your first meeting is going to happen at 9 o'clock a.m. and you already see, your inbox is full and half your attention is going to is probably, let me reply a little bit here and little bit be present to this meeting. One of the things that I do is I begin my day half an hour of email clearing, and my inbox is always clear. The moment there is an email that comes in the morning, half an hour I'm checking my mails, I am either marking it as spam, deleting it, archiving it, snoozing it. My inbox before I begin my work is empty. So that's also like, okay, this is done and over with, and it doesn't kind of overlap with other things in life. So having a dedicated time for emails, having also a dedicated time for planning, and then having a dedicated time for breaks, for naps, for birthdays, for special days, for holidays, and really keeping that time for interstices. These interstices are really like the magic of the calendars. So interstices are things like, transition time, your preparation time, your travel time, your break time, your immediate follow-up time. More often than not, if you attend a meeting, try just after that have some immediate follow-up time, so that, tuck 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 tuck, things that you made note of, you kind of put them in motion. Or even time for concentration, for relaxation, for yoga nidra, an afternoon 20-minute nap, reflection, assimilation. See, for instance, if I go and attend a session, I consciously keep a time after 20 minutes, just after that I'm going to be reflecting on it, so that I've kind of, picked out all the gems of the insights I had, and they're in that place when that topic is alive in me. And even keep time for interruptions and expected delays. And that is one of the things that many people don't do. Say, if if I'm going to be working from a public office, 2-3 people are going to come and disturb me. Instead of getting irritated at that point in time, plan for it. No, in this particular space, this will happen. So when you plan for it or account for it, there are less likelihood of, getting frustrated or disappointed. And then another beautiful thing through which you can weave your calendar is moments of silence. So in your calendar, as you start framing your calendar, there will be like different colors, and one event, second event, third event. The spaces between the one event and the second event, that 1 minute between, all the events you've put in your calendar, those are your moments of silence. Those are your ways of connecting to the divine. Those are the moments of concentrating in the deeper heart. And that is how that, even without having a separate practice, actually, you've embedded in your schedule itself a very, very impactful practice. Just a moment of silence to begin something, and just a moment of silence to close it, to bring a closure to it, to offer it. So even as at this point in time, see, you're completely at stage 1. If you're offering it, that work itself has the possibility to become magical, to become full of silence. Now, every meeting has a follow-up time allotted in your schedule from the get-go. each meeting must be followed by at least the same number of follow-up hours. So this is another rule that I use for myself. If I'm sitting in a meeting for 1 hour and I'm not coming back and working minimum for 1 hour, then probably I need to rethink whether I need to sit in this meeting or not. And similarly, even with education, even when I'm attending a certain course, if I'm attending something for 1.5 hours, and if I'm not following it up by 1.5 hours, then it's for me to question, because it's really in that other 1.5 hours that I take for myself that I'm really assimilating and making that knowledge a part of myself. Otherwise, what I've done is shopping, or what I've done in a meeting is given advices, really unsolicited advices. So every time I find myself, I'm in a meeting where I'm not taking the work back home of similar number of hours, I'm questioning whether I need to be in this meeting or not, whether it's the best use of my time at all or not. And whereas a lot of people see it the other way around, I've at least encountered many such people in my life, that if they are given a meeting without having to do any follow-up work, they prefer it like that. But really, those are not, really, if you want to be participating only in things that brings you joy, participating only in things that brings a flow in your life, that brings a dynamism in your life, that brings manifestation in your life, really hold yourself accountable to this rule, or make a similar rule for yourself. It could be different rules for different people. Because I also, for instance, in certain meetings that I sit, I am only like an advisor. And there I understand, because my role in that meeting is of an advisor. So my follow-up would be 10-15 minutes and that's it. So you have to see for yourself, according to your situation, what is the rule you want to hold yourself accountable by. So the rule that I've been holding myself accountable by is, if I go to a meeting for half an hour, minimum I should be working half an hour for the agenda of that meeting. Otherwise, I really don't, that meeting is not meant for me. Then ask yourself, how much of the homework are you proactively willing to take? If not much, you are not meant to be in the meeting. I think connected to what I just shared. The second rule is to be fully concentrated when working. There's a particular quotation by Sri Aurobindo where he says that not a moment before and not a moment after should you be thinking of work. Actually, when I read it, it really kind of shifted something in me, that not 1 minute before, not 1 minute after, should I be thinking about the work that I would be doing. Which means that if I've scheduled 2 hours to do a certain work, in those 2 hours, I should not be thinking about anything else but the work that I'm doing. So for me, that particular quotation said, very lightly by Sri Aurobindo, has been very impactful. To be fully concentrated when working, no mobile, social media, email, gossip, emails, internet surfing, as much as possible one can avoid. And then what this particular rule given by Sri Aurobindo, I'm sorry, I didn't edit this part. This particular quotation by Sri Aurobindo really has helped me to be consciously present and not to autopilot things, because not a moment before, not a moment after am I supposed to be thinking about this. Meaning right now I'm only supposed to be with this thing. And that actually really has helped me to be more and more present. Because otherwise I used to really, at least like when I had read this quotation 5 years ago, I used to wonder what if an excellent idea comes, how can I be present, and so on and so forth. This used to be always like at the back of my mind, because I used to receive many ideas in life. But ever since I read this quotation, that not a moment before and not a moment after, even if something comes, even if a brilliant idea comes, I just spark it and I'm back. And I'm not proactively inviting the flow of ideas. That's important. But if it comes, I'm parking it, but then I'm back. And that really frees you, that brings you a lot of joy, a lot of life into your life. If you can concentrate, it does not take time or multiple drafts. That's another thing. There's a quotation by the mother where she says that, if you really concentrate, what generally takes an hour will take you 10 minutes. And there's this other quotation where she says, instead of spending years to realize what one has to realize, one can do it in a few months, sometimes even in a few days. And if there is sufficient intensity, in a few hours. So for me, if anything, the biggest gift of a calendar is this thing of living life intensely. That, not letting even a moment of your life get wasted. That intensity of life to be expressed in its fullness. That for me is really the crux of the calendar. Now, over a period of time that, as you kind of start doing this thing of not a moment before and not a moment after, what it makes you develop is the capacity of how much time exactly will a certain work take. That predictability becomes very, very obvious. When you say it will take 45 minutes, it takes 45 minutes. When you say 2 hours, it takes 2 hours. And then you're really able to start on time and finish on time. I personally still struggle with finishing on time many times, but at least like this thing of starting on time is something that, has kind of really come. And the third is timely dropping things that are not working out. Actually, calendar is nothing but over a period of time, a self-reflection. Over a period of time, you're really able to see yourself. And where is it that, you are kind of giving your time in life? And that will become, that will make it more and more easier for you to understand what are the things that are not working out. Because you can very visibly see. So to learn to say no, learn to say no when the calendar is giving you that feedback. Learn to say no. So every time, a new entry comes, just because somebody is asking for a meeting is not the reason why I'm putting it in my calendar. Or just because an event is happening in Orwell is not the reason why I put it in my calendar. There's so many people asking so many things is not the reason why I put it in my calendar. It always has to go via one criteria for me. Is this new entry fulfilling the purpose of my life? Is this new entry really aligned to my life? And then many times, I do end up saying no to several things, which if I was not keeping a calendar, they would have just been a part of, part and parcel of life. So every new entry has to kind of go through this golden rule for yourself. And then say no to filling up your calendar. Leave some free space, have an event-free day. An event-free day doesn't mean that, you don't have to have anything in your calendar. You can have still your own practices and stuff like that. But at least like one day of the week, I like to keep to myself where I'm not meeting people or, in conversation with other people, where it's just about me, my work, and that really brings a very dedicated higher focus, where it's not about meetings or this or that, where I can fully just concentrate on what I want to concentrate on in solitude. So at least have some days, depending on your context and your needs. Some people feel, some people would find I do anyway a lot of meetings and interactions, and I'm very comfortable with that. But another person may be just not comfortable with it. So you may require way more number of event-free days than probably I do. I am pretty comfortable. For me, once a week really works, but you have to see for yourself. And not to have a full day of meetings. And as much as possible, avoid that. See, if I'm scheduling, even if I'm scheduling back-to-back meetings, I schedule it in one half of the day so that the second half of the day is for follow-up and nothing else. And actually my calendar also has this thing called follow-up. So there is just like one chunk, if I'm going for a 3-hour meeting or whatever, 1-hour meeting, then another 1 hour will naturally say follow-up. And that's usually the discipline that I follow. And if I can't just have it just after, as soon as possible, and never fill it up with back-to-back meetings and a full day, full of meetings and engagement. Give yourself that breathing time. Then parking each little thing as it comes. So the moment a perspective, an idea, a task, a reminder comes, put it, like for instance, when I'm sitting in a session, even when I'm sitting in a session and I feel, okay, this particular video may be useful for Ramanik, I make a note of it there and then, so that, I'm not thinking about it all the time. And then I'm back to Ramanik and I'm fully holding space for him. When I'm listening to Ramanik, I'm fully just listening to him. Moment an idea comes, a task comes, a perspective comes, I note it down. And then it's parked and it's done and over with. And after, the session from the notepad, either it goes into my task list or it's done because I've kept time for follow-up, or it is a part of my calendar. In either of these three, it kind of flows. Now, amongst these three, it's always preferable to go for time blocks over lists. And this is purely from a productivity angle. People who keep time blocks get more done than people who keep to-do lists. The most productive people do not rely on lists. Instead, they construct time blocks into their calendars. Some people call this time boxing. These are simply specific chunks of time used for a particular task. During this block, this is the only thing that you pay attention to. So even if, like, for instance, I've been invited for a talk on 24th of January. I'm not put, and 24th of January is not like tomorrow or something, right? It's farther in the future. Now, instead of seeing, putting it in my to-do, it's already there next week, Wednesday morning. That is when I will prepare for it. That's it. And that, how did I decide that? Over a period of time when, you become used to it, you exactly know which is the time period meant for preparation for this, due to different factors, due to the other engagements, but also due to the energy of the time. And whether is that truth meant to happen in that moment. So from the very subtle factors to very material factors, determine what is the right thing that has to be done in each moment. So that's already parked in a time block. It's not really just parked in a list. Oh, I have to do this. It's parked. The fifth is honoring and consistency. By doing the task every day or every week at the same time, we prime ourselves for it. So it becomes easier to create a rhythm, especially not just we are doing it at the same time, but the right time energetically. It's like the moment, every day in the morning, you do the cleaning at the same time. It's like you become primed at that time to do that particular task. And it also happens faster. I've noticed when I'm brooming in the morning, somewhat it's like takes lesser time. When I'm doing it in the evening, whereas the task is the same. But it's like now my mind is primed that, at 7 o'clock I broom. It's like 7 o'clock when I broom, it literally happens. I've noticed in like 7 minutes. When I do it in the evening, it happens in 15 minutes. So literally like there's that bit of a time difference. And yeah, so what this also consistency and honoring means that, often we are really good with honoring outer commitments. So for instance, if I committed to Leela, 2 o'clock I will be there. Most likely I'm likely to be there. But if I committed to myself at 6:30 in the morning, I'm going to be doing Surya Namaskar, I don't take it that seriously. 50% seriously, then late. And also whenever there are no money involved, when money is involved, we're like, yeah, we're there dot on time. When commitment with other people or money is involved, our commitment and discipline is another level. But when money is not involved, where, outer commitments are not involved, you'll also notice, your own commitments dwindle. So respecting the calendar is also respecting the inner commitments. Calendars are not only meant for outer things. So even if it's a commitment to myself, I want to be oiling my hair on Saturday night, I put that in my calendar because it's important and I want to be oiling my hair. So it happens and it's a part of my commitment to myself. Now, another thing to kind of the sixth rule, so as to speak, is if you want to get things done, always proceed your commitment with by when, or if it is the another person who's making a commitment, ask that person by when. Just this simple word, by when, can really accelerate the movement of life in your life. So what happens is we say we will do this. By when? That really anchors it. Or somebody tells us, that fine, I will do this. Then ask very politely, by when will you be able to do it? So that it really anchors in time. Whatever is anchored in time is what will manifest. For manifestation to happen, you cannot not use the instrument of time. The only thing is, are you using it well or not? So by when, and the other is what time. Each time there's a conversation about a meeting. Now this one I'd like to elaborate a little bit. So one of the mistakes I had made in life is I got so used to asking people what time that some of the meetings which were actually not meant to happen, meaning that were not really so useful, I would still kind of ask what time. That is the extreme other end, which is, asking what time for everything, scheduling a time and a date, even if, so first is to kind of sense whether is it your work to ask what time. Because if the drive is coming from you, which is there is something that you really want to manifest, then it's your job to ask what time. But if it is the other person's drive, it is the other person's task to make it happen, then allow the other person to ask what time. Because if you are going to schedule a time, that is pretty much you are driving the other person. So with all your good habits of scheduling, don't also on the pathway carry other people, let them drive themselves. And that's one of the mistakes I made, because I was always like on my toes, okay, like what time? And I realized that, it's okay, let certain people fail. It's okay, I don't have to drive everybody around me. That certain people get excited and then that excitement goes away. There is no need to ask for what time for everybody. And so now I'm asking not just what time, I'm also asking myself, is it my job to ask what time or my job is to keep quiet? So yeah, the seventh is simple and small. Schedule small chunks. I was reading people like, Tesla and Bill Gates, they have like 5-minute chunks of time. And while that I do not know how it looks and how they function with it, and I really have no idea what that even means. 5 minutes is like too quick, it just goes like that. What must they be kind of scheduling in a day? But I don't know. Anyway, what I've been really missing in the Google Calendar is a 15-minute chunk of time that is visually representative. Because I'm really seeing I'm doing things in 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. That's really the the duration, which is kind of coming for me. Whereas Google Calendar minimum chunk is 30 minutes of a visually neat way of showing. So that's a personal struggle that I'm facing right now. And yeah, right now though I'm quite on Google Calendar, I do not know how it would feel like to shift to something else, but it does feel like the time has come to graduate to a better app. So yeah, basically what this means is schedule small chunks. So usually a default calendar will give you an hour-long chunk. Just because it is giving you an hour-long chunk doesn't mean you have to make everything 1 hour long. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes, sometimes it takes 45 minutes. So decide how much of that chunk it is. Just don't let, because the calendar is giving 1 hour, everything kind of becomes 1 hour. Then simplify. One is, simplify your project into small little tasks. So you're really concentrated on that bit-sized work that you're doing, and you're fully just enjoying joyously like that. It's like, earlier we used to celebrate victories at the end of the project, at the end of, establishing something big. But if you can break down that big thing into small little things, you're giving yourself, 12 more celebration points in your life. The moment, that big project, you break it down into 12 little parts, and that 12 little parts, completion of each of those parts is a celebration onto itself. And then the second technique is batching tasks, which is putting tasks which are similar to each other together. So I don't also make like a bucket list of tasks, which is all kinds of tasks put together. The moment task comes, it's like Savitri painting has a different set of task lists, Prayoga has a different set of task lists. They're never kind of put together. So that when I'm concentrating on those tasks, I'm fully kind of concentrating on that particular project. Then is to think in terms of half times, which is by doing it for 2 times in one go, I do it in half time, which means a very bad example of it is that, if I have to cook twice for lunch and dinner, I cook once. And do time ka ek mein ho gaya. I mean, it would take way more amount of time if I had to kind of take out the paraphernalia twice. But that's a bad example. Okay, don't follow it. But you can really apply it in other aspects of your life to simplify. And then all of this will really allow you to do the right kind of multitasking, which is checking mail over commute is a right kind of a multitasking. It's not like you're distracted and at two things at the same time and hopping from one thing to the other, but really making full use of the interstices. I remember, as a child, there was an English chapter in which I don't remember any details, but I just remember this one guy who had managed to produce just a lot of art. And this interviewer asked him that, how did you manage so much in one lifetime? And he said, it took you 10 minutes to come from the elevator, from the parking to up here. And in 10 minutes, I had kind of managed to write a sonnet. So it's like making full use of that 10 minutes of waiting. Now, I'm not saying that every 10 minutes you have to be productive, you have to be creative, but you can really use even those 10 minutes just to kind of observe your breath or remember the divine or aspire. You can contextualize that learning. I'm not saying one has to kind of become like a machine and be creative and productive at every point in time, but also not to take words like, being productive as negative, especially when productivity is for service and for the divine. There is nothing like, a bad word there. Eighth is have a strong start. So one thing is building a calendar. The other is living a calendar. When you're living a calendar, when you're really surrendering to it and living the juice and the rasa in it, it's very, very important to have a strong start. Are you doing the first thing which is a part of your calendar? That makes a lot of difference to, how this day that, you've designed for your own full potential to come alive. That really depends on how the first thing in the morning goes. And often, so this is one technique I used to use for a long period of time when I was not in a habit of kind of getting up early, is I had a difficulty getting up early. So I began my day with an appointment. So I committed the time to somebody else. Like for instance, I was practicing dance at 6:30 a.m. with another person. And that just kind of, because I had committed to this other person and she was going to come at my home, so I had to get up in the morning. And so that's a technique I have followed for a long period of time. Now I find it much easier to do it by myself. But you can also follow tips and tricks like this. Then is know your calendar and its possibilities. Oftentimes we are just using a calendar and a calendar app and we are just limited to its possible, whatever is visible, whatever is default. But actually, if you really start exploring calendar, what it can, what it cannot, to what extent can it be customized, you will really know your playing field and you will play your game well. You will make the right choice. You will make the best use of what you're already using. So for that, there are a few things. So in a calendar app, usually there are extra fields that we just ignore. That extra fields can actually be made use. So extra fields are things like meeting link, description, notes, colors, how you can really color code your entire calendar can be a very, very interesting way. Because if I'm saying a magical Monday, my calendar should look like a magical Monday. No. So colors, custom repetition, you can really custom repeat things and you can set strategic reminders. So not just, say a 15-minute before is a default reminder. And usually we all are very happy with whatever Google has programmed for us. But if you would really like to use the app to its full potential, why not set a reminder probably 24 hours in advance? That will help you remember that task and maybe you'll work on that task. So really make use of this extra. The second is make sure it's synced fully. You've enabled offline, you've synced holidays. You may also like to sync tasks from to-dos, whichever app you use for to-dos. I've been personally using Asana, that your to-dos are also synced into the calendar itself. And then in case you're having storage issues, you've enabled cloud storage for ease of syncing. That way, from any device at any point in time you want to access your calendar, you can access it. Then default settings. You need not use the default duration of the meetings. Do not just go ahead with the default view. You can even use the view of the calendar to your liking. So really experiment. Do I like this view of the calendar better? Does this work better for me? Does that work better for me? Just don't buy in whatever is the default features given to you. And the next is to be time efficient. Use recurring events feature, there are also apps such as Zapier. I discovered that, that smart guess, what would you like to be scheduling, it kind of already has a hint, and it will tell you maybe this is what you're trying to schedule, because it knows your tendencies. And you can always use these days Alexa and your OK Google and your Siri to schedule a calendar event. And then if particularly you're used to scheduling things from a computer, I'm not at all used to doing it from a computer, so I do not know any of the keyboard shortcuts, but if you are, you can learn some of those as well. Very practical little things, but really make the full use out of this tool which is in your hand. And then you can really have multiple calendars also. So for instance, there's a for between me and Manoj, we have a joint calendar. There's Manoj's calendar, and then there's mine, and there's an ACI calendar. So there are these 4 kind of colors and these 4 kind of calendars. Similarly, what that also allows is, for instance, if I've segregated between my professional and my personal, and I've synced both in my kind of mobile, then if I just want to share with, say, Leela, my professional engagements, I can do that. And she does not need to see what time do I brush, what time do I bath, what time do I clean. Probably she's not interested in that. And it's just my professional calendar, which is my work calendar. So you can even name each of them. And nowadays, even there are apps like Calendly that allows other people to book an appointment in your calendar, and you can specify which slots, so that all those, hundreds of emails to schedule that one appointment, you don't have to kind of put yourself through that torture. You can simply tell the other person, hey, this is, my Calendly account. You can book an appointment here, and you've already given this, the slots in which, you're free. And then you can color code. And color code according to color psychology, according to the energy of the different sections of your life. Blue for relaxation, maroon if you want something to stand out. And then it's important to capture it in real time, which is unlike a physical calendar. In a digital one, you can capture it in real time. And like I already mentioned, that I also edit the past events for better self-awareness in future. Then follow-up and reminders. There is also this possibility of having follow-ups, documents sent, all automatically, reminders sent automatically. We can all really make use of these things. Actually, Calendly, for instance, gives this thing of auto reminders, auto follow-up materials being sent, a lot of these things that are actually there, but hardly I've seen people make use of technology in the right way. Very few people. There's a lot which is possible with this. Next is decluttering applies to all aspects of life, and that includes your calendar. So keep your calendar clutter free, no automatic events, standing meetings unnecessarily, that anything which is unnecessary need not be a part of your calendar. Then to keep time for planning, be it keeping time for planning on Sundays, or at the end of the day, early morning, after work, whatever works for you. Keep some time for planning and assessment. Then addressing the elephant in the room, and this is the last one. The elephant in the room is generally there is one task which is either very difficult, or we have some resistance, that it's really like an elephant in the room. It's like that one task we don't want to do, and it's important, so we can't let go of it, and we don't want to do, and it's important, it's difficult. So address that as the first thing in the morning. It's called the frog in the breakfast. Have the frog in the breakfast. It's the first thing in the morning that you address when your mind is fresh, is that task which is the most difficult, which is really the elephant in the house. And this is another kind of a finding, which is 80% of your results actually come from 20% of your work. So what is that 20% of your work? Give that the priority, the first thing in your day. The other is, in terms of addressing the elephant in the room, is to address conflicts now. But here I don't mean any kind of interpersonal conflicts. I basically mean calendar conflicts. Often, whenever there's a calendar conflict, many of us, just let it be. To address it right away so that it's resolved and your flow of life is not interrupted. And with that, I think all 12 are kind of done now. This is just an extra tip that I found. Is I do the first option, which is I basically schedule with 90 hours. I've written 90 minutes. Sorry. 90 minutes focus sessions. So generally I would schedule a work for 90 minutes. But that's me. Manoj generally does it 25 minutes. So even if he's scheduled 3 hours, he has a timer going on in which he's working for 25 minutes. 5 minutes, he'll walk, do stretching, do some household chores, come back. Once again, 25 minutes. So he does it this 25-minute rhythm. I am not able to do 25 minutes. For me, is too quick to kind of also have a timer and things like that. I have my 90 minutes, not hours, focus session. So everything generally I schedule 1.5 hours. That's the one that I like. But there's a third option also. If you're scheduling in hour, 52 minutes of utterly concentrated work followed by 17 minutes of break. That's another possibility. Whatever really works for you, but just keep taking breaks. Then if you really, are somebody who likes the calendar to be printed, you're like, hey, mobile pe to nahi, matlab, I don't get the feel in the mobile, then get it printed. You will also get a very visual reminder. And good thing with actually a printed calendar is, a mobile calendar, you can always keep altering, modifying, because, but once you have a physical calendar of the week printed and put, you can't pretty much have a lot of choice in whatever you've scheduled to make change there. And that does to a huge extent inculcate discipline in you. And like during that time when I was not using my mobile calendar and I just had that calendar, then I was like, oh, now I don't have a choice. I can't just be like, oh, I don't feel like doing it, let me just reschedule it. Because on mobile, rescheduling is just so easy. You just drag and drop and it's done and it's rescheduled. But when you have it physically in front of you, how many post-its will I put on the top of it? No, I have to do it because this is the intention that I set for myself. So it also in many ways kind of makes life easier and located somewhere centrally. And there's also a lot of joy in physically ticking off things, done it, crossed. There's also like a lot of joy in doing that. So I think these are the two extra tips. With that, we come to the task of the day. The first is design an ideal week. So tomorrow, take out some time to design your ideal week. Right now, you're not designing your current week. You're looking at ideally. And by ideal, I don't mean like too ideal. It's not like, up in the heavens and, then. But basically, if 100% things are in your control in your life, how would your ideal day look like? Then on Wednesday, your task would be from that ideal to however much realistically you can look at your next week. And you design your calendar for the next week. And I would really be very, very happy to provide very personalized custom feedback, something that I love to do on your calendars. You can really give me a link or a screenshot of the calendar that you come up with, and I would be more than happy to kind of celebrate it, have a look at it. And so in light of actually these two tasks, there was a third task, which was the 12 indicators, which if you are able to do it before we meet on Wednesday, that's great. And I would be very happy. But if you're not able to do it because, you did not plan for it and you were not expecting these two tasks to kind of come, 2 tasks of the day to come, I will also completely understand. You can do it on Thursday before your social intervention session. But I'd really like you to really apply your learnings in the form of a calendar, an ideal calendar, and then your very, very practical calendar. And probably one thing you can do is, even if you don't have the time to fill in the 12 indicators worksheet, because that will, I think, take at least an hour, you can just go through the 12 indicators. So at least while you're designing your ideal week, you naturally begin to kind of think on those lines and apply some of that, if that naturally kind of happens. So I think that's that. It's 8:31. Would really like to kind of urge and request everybody, just as we kind of close the session, or before we kind of close the session, maybe take 2 minutes to kind of just assimilate and and write down if you know you had an insight, a learning, a question, something that's burning inside of you. We'll take up everything on Wednesday, not right now, but I don't want you to lose it. So capture it in your journal, any insight, any question that's kind of coming. And if you have questions which are clarificatory in nature, those you can shoot to me directly over WhatsApp. So we take 2 minutes just to kind of assimilate, and then a moment of silence. I think everyone already took a moment of silence. Cool. I think then we can close for the day, and yeah, look forward to Wednesdays and look forward to your calendar, either screenshot or links or yeah, whatever. Yeah, that you know, whatever format, whatever app that you know you are used to using. I really look forward to that. See you on Wednesday. Okay. Thank you. Good night. Bye.